What's good YouTube? It's your boy Mirr, bringing you another guide for the first Descendant. Today I'll be talking about the newest Ultimate Descendant, Valby. We'll be going over her builds, viable weapon choices, her reactor and components, as well as the most optimized farming route so you can obtain her as fast as possible. I just want to give a quick shout out to the homie Rumi, Reed, and Gnome for allowing me to get you guys this video as soon as possible. Without them, I would still be farming for Ultimate Valby. So thank you guys a lot, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So starting with her build, we'll be using Supply Moisture as a Transcendent mod. What this mod allows Valby to do is whenever she's standing on her water, which will be all the time when you use her abilities, your weapon's elemental trigger rate is increased by 2%, your firearm crit hit rate is increased by 20%. It is a flat 20%, so if your gun has 0, you gain 20. It's not a multiplier. Your skill crit hit rate is also increased by 20%, and your skill duration is increased by 10%. And this just allows weapons like the Thunder Cage to have insane amounts of crit rate. This is 100% her best Transcendent mod. Even with the two new ones that came out, we'll actually be talking about one of them in the farming build, but you 100% want to get this mod. All her other ones are kind of mid, to say the least. And for our survivability, we'll be using HP amplification. This will give us 220% max HP at the cost of shield. If you don't know, shield is useless in this game. You don't ever want to build for it. And you can just get a higher EHP, which is your effective health, just by speccing into your HP over your shield. So losing the 36% of our shield isn't an actual health decrease. On top of that, we're pairing that with Iron Defense, which gives us 90% or 89% defense on top of extra skill power modifier. In my last video, people were telling me that Spear and Shield does more damage all the time, which just isn't the case. I tested both of these. Iron Defense was giving me higher numbers, so I believe that means it does more damage, but feel free to use either one. The difference in damage actually isn't that big, so if you don't have Iron Defense, Spear and Shield is fine. You can use whichever one you have. For our skill power modifier, we're gonna go with Dimension Specialist. This gives us the most amount of damage to our Dimension abilities, which are our 2 and 3. On top of that, we're using Non-Attribute Master to give us skill power and non-attribute skill power. I've said this before, but the master mods give you the most amount of damage out of all of the battle mods or skill power mods that you can use. We're also pairing this with skill expansion for extra skill range and skill extension for extra skill duration. On top of the extra 10% that we get from Supply Moisture, this goes to 46.5%. We're using double crit. Again, actually we're using triple crit, so we have our skill insight for crit rate, skill concentration for skill crit hit damage, and then front lines for more crit damage and crit rate as well. And then for our arc mod, we're using lethal infection. What this mod does is whenever an enemy steps on your water, they get inflicted with the debuff called laundry, and this counts as a debuff. And because we're getting an extra 20% crit rate on top of the high crit rate that the Thunder Cage already has, we'll be proccing lethal infection every time that we shoot an enemy that's been inflicted with our laundry debuff. And what this does is gives you skill power modifier up to 10 stacks, which goes to 25%. Now this ability doesn't apply on your initial cast, but it does apply on the second cast. But the good thing about that is that second cast will now snapshot. So for instance, if you use Valby's 3 and you go past your enemy, before you shoot the enemies, let's say 10,000 damage, and after you get to max stats on this and you press the ability again, now you'll be doing 15,000 damage. But even when the stacks disappear, you'll still be hitting for that 15,000 damage every time. I like to actually use weapons in this game instead of just spamming, clean up in circles. So lethal infection is the mod I went with. You can also go with MP collector or HP collector. Both work perfectly fine. Also for your dimension mod, you can go with focus on dimension if you'd like. It gives you a 6.1% cooldown reduction, but I'm pretty sure it only takes off like a second and a half, so I didn't think it was worth the damage loss, but that is a choice that you have. Also, if you feel like you're still too squishy, you can remove Iron Defense and put on any of the other defensive mods that you'd like. Same with HP amplification. The only mod that's actually higher than this is Stem Accelerant. Now that's it for our main build. Now for the farming build, because we love just going in circles with Valby to get gold, we're using Battle of Stamina as our HP mod, skill expansion for more range, double duration mods so that our water can last as long as possible. We're still running our triple crit, with non-attribute master for our damage, and then we're using MP conversion so that we can have 100% uptime on our cleanup ability, and then we're using MP collector just so we can also always spam our abilities so we have enough MPs to do so. And then we're using spiral tidal wave. You don't need this mod at all. You don't need any mod here, actually. I was just kind of messing around with it. What this does is it changes your one from being the ball that bounces on the ground to similar to VS's first ability. I was just kind of messing around with this. You don't need it. It doesn't give you any extra benefit. I mean, I just wanted to use it because it was the new mod. But that's pretty much it for our builds. Let's go ahead and get into the weapons. So my weapon of choice for Valby is actually the Thunder Cage. This weapon is really good for mobbing, which is the main content you use Valby for. We're using crit hit rate, crit hit damage, electric attack, and weak point damage. You can also get rid of the weak point and put on firearm attack, or get rid of the electric attack and put on firearm attack. This is just what it rolled, and I don't feel like spending 20 just to get firearm attack, so this is the rolls I decided to stay with. The build we're using for the Thunder Cage is a pretty simple one. We're using action and reaction, rifling and reinforcement, and fire rate up, which are your 3 staple mods, crit hit rate, and crit hit damage. I have on Recycling Genius, which is a mod you don't need. I would actually recommend using concentration priority, if I can spell. This will give you 30% crit damage, or not 30%, I forgot what it maxes out at, but it'll give you crit damage with Valby supply moisture. You'll be critting all the time, so this just makes your Thunder Gauge do insane amount of damage. And then at that point you would want Recycling Genius to off-put the reload time modifier, but you don't need Recycling Genius actually. If you wait for your reload bar to go to 60%, you do anything that causes you to do an animation such as grappling or even certain abilities, your reload will cancel its animation or reload time and you'll instantly get the ammo. And then I just have on Brisk Walk because it's fun, but I would put on like Firing Fiesta or honestly any of the special mods you want. Another weapon that synergizes really well with Valby is the Blue Beetle. When you cast her 1 and 4 ability, you have a 50% chance to gain 10% skill crit hit rate, which you don't need, but you can use this if you want to. And this weapon maxed out goes to 30% skill crit hit rate. So if you're using this along with Valby's abilities, you'll be critting pretty much all the time. Again, this only works when you use her 1 and her 4, which aren't her best abilities or most used abilities, but if you remember to press them, then you can get a bonus to your skill crit hit rate when you press your other 2 abilities. So this is another weapon that pairs really well with Valby. Another weapon you can use with Valby is the Peacemaker, which is the brand new hand cannon that just came out today. What it does is when you use a dimension skill, you get a stack, and when you get 5 stacks, the next time you shoot, all 8 bullets in the clip will shoot at once. And what this does is it allows the lethal infection that we have to instantly gain 8 stacks. You don't need this weapon. Honestly, it's easier to just spray an SMG to get your stacks. But if you grinded for this weapon, then it is another weapon you can use. Now for Valby's Reactor, you'll want a non-attribute reactor with Dimension skill power boost. As far as the mounting goes, you want to make sure that whatever your primary weapon is that's in hand is the weapon you'll want to use. For me, that'll be the Thunder Cage. As you can see, I don't have one, but as of recording this on July 31st, you can farm the best reactors for Valby for an entire week. So I would recommend going to farm one of those, even if you don't have Ultimate Valby. If you plan on getting her, now is the best time to farm those reactors. As far as the substats go, you really can't go wrong. You can go with more damage, so you can get non-attribute skill power or dimension skill power. I went with full utility. The little bit of cooldown actually doesn't matter. You could honestly get rid of cooldown. I would still recommend keeping the duration though, just so your water stays on the ground longer, and it'll help you build your uptime a little bit better. She scales more off duration than she does with cooldown, so you could replace the cooldown with non-attribute, dimension. Crit hit damage is actually really good. I wouldn't recommend crit rate because you're getting so much of it, especially if you're using the Blue Beetle, but that's another possibility. Now as far as our external components, I would recommend getting a 2-set Annihilation. You don't need the 4-set, but there's currently not another 4-set that really synergizes really well with her. There are a lot of 2 pieces you can use, like there's a toxin resistance one, there's a max shield and HP heal, there's a sniper crit rate. There's a lot of different 2 pieces you can use. As long as you have 2-piece annihilation, it doesn't really matter. I would recommend that you get main stats for max HP and defense. Like, don't get max shield as your main stat on whatever 2-piece you decide to get. Just have 2 HP and 2 defense if you can, because in the build we're actually taking away our shield, so you don't want to scale your shield even higher. As far as substats go for her auxiliary, you want max HP. That's really the only one that matters. The other things you can get is fire resistance, MP recovery out of combat, or Kuiper shard drop rate is what I would recommend. For your sensor, you want max MP and MP recovery in combat. This is very important because you'll be spamming your abilities and you'll want to recover MP obviously in combat, and you want your max MP just to be higher so you have a higher pool to, you know, pool, because, you know, Valby is water. And anyways, get max MP and MP recovery in combat. Next, for your memory, I recommend getting defense and MP recovery modifier. Finally, for the processor, you'll want max shield and shield recovery modifier. Max shield because this is the only substat you can roll that actually helps with your survivability. Shield recovery modifier is the one you can honestly switch out for toxin resistance, so that way you can get the most survivability out of your processor. But that's pretty much it for her external components. Hopefully a set in the future that synergizes better with non-attribute characters, maybe specifically, or just Valby in general, comes out. But right now, there isn't currently one. So like I said earlier, as long as you get your 2-piece annihilation, whatever your other 2 pieces are don't really matter. But that's it for Valby's entire build. Let's go over how to actually obtain her as fast as possible. Now, I would start with Valby's Stabilizer and Spiral Catalyst. The Stabilizer can be found at Hagios here at the outpost. You will have to stealth to get this, but in 113, Ultimate Bunny cells can also drop, so you'll also be farming Ultimate Bunny as well. After you do the outpost in Hagios, I would head to Vespers. Here, you'll come over to the Law Supply Depot and do the outpost here. You will have to stealth to get number 73, but number 73 also drops the bunny cells the same as 113. So I would go between both of these until you get one of each and then instantly open both. And then if you get it, you don't have to farm the other one anymore. And if you don't get it, just keep going back and forth until you get one of each, then open both and just continue to do that until you get both the parts. Now, after you've obtained the Stabilizer and the Spiral Catalyst, you're actually going to head back to Hagios. You're going to do the dungeon, the Haven, at the very top of the map. I would also recommend putting the multiplier high enough to where you can get 2 in one run. Go open them. If you don't get it, then you go back and do another 2 and just continue that cycle until you get that part. Finally, for her code, you have 2 options. You have the Eco Swamp Dungeon, the Chapel, at the top right. This drops the code at a 10% chance, but it also has a 20% chance to drop an Ultimate Bunny piece. Or you can do the Fortress Dungeon Quarantine Zone in the bottom right. This has a 20% chance to drop the code, but there's no bunny piece in it. If you were trying to farm both Ultimate Bunny and Ultimate Valby, I would personally recommend doing the Eco Swamp with the lower drop chance if you don't already have Ultimate Bunny, because by the time you finish getting Ultimate Valby, you should have 2 parts for Ultimate Bunny and you'll be working on 2 things at once. But if you just want Ultimate Valby right away, then go to Fortress Quarantine Zone and get the 20% drop chance. Also, while we're on the map, I'll quickly show you. If you go in the bottom right to difficulty level rewards, we go to general rounds, non-attribute, dimension reactor. This is where you'll farm the best reactor for Valby currently. I would recommend doing this Tree of Truth mission. It literally takes like 2 minutes to do. You activate 3 points here, and then you just defend them. You don't even have to stand inside of them. And this drops actually quite a few of them because there's a lot of enemies that appear during this mission. So if you want to farm your best reactor for Valby, then that's the mission I would suggest. But obviously you can do any of the missions in this area. I mean, it's only 2, but I mean, you can choose either of these 2. That's it for my Ultimate Valby video. I hope you found the information useful. You know, good luck on your drop rates. You can get Ultimate Valby as soon as possible. I've been having a lot of fun with her all day today. I had a 13-hour stream. If you weren't there, you missed out. You know, a few things happened. I can't speak on it. If you were there, you know, it's a if you know type situation. But I hope y'all have a good rest of your day or night, and I'll catch y'all. Peace.